Hi, this is Dave, and this is Dave's Worldview. Hey, today I want to talk to you about two pieces of legislation that are slated to be voted on in the Senate in the very near future. I probably should have done this last week. Um, anyhow, one of them is the Equality Act, or what I would call the Inequality Act, and the other is the For the People Act, or what I would call the One Party America Act. The Equality Act, or House Resolution 5, has already been passed through the House and is now waiting to be taken up in committee and then voted on by the Senate. What is the Equality Act? Well, that depends on who you ask. The progressives and the media they control would like you to believe that the Equality Act is a bill that, if passed, would amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in employment, housing, public accommodation, public education, federal funding, and the jury system. But the so-called Equality Act does much more than that. Here are 5 groups that would be harmed if the Equality Act becomes law. Number 1, employers and workers would be harmed. The Equality Act would force employers and workers to conform to new sexual norms or else lose their businesses and their jobs. This is already happening on the state and local level. The most high-profile example involves Colorado baker Jack Phillips, whose case went all the way to the Supreme Court after the Colorado Civil Rights Commission accused him of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation when he declined to create a custom cake for a same-sex wedding. Never mind that he was happy to make anything else for this couple, but he didn't feel comfortable making a same-sex cake. And he's not the only victim. Other cases involve disagreement over the meaning of marriage, features florists, bakers, photographers, wedding venue owners, videographers, web designers, calligraphers, and public servants. These are real people like Baranelle Stutzman, a 70-year-old grandma and florist in Washington State, and Melissa and Aaron Klein, owners of Sweet Cakes by Melissa. They're from Oregon. The state of Oregon penalized the Kleins $135,000 for refusing to create a government-approved message. Reading from the First Liberty website, it says free Americans should not be compelled by the government to create a message that conflicts with their deepest convictions. But that's what Aaron and Melissa Klein, owners of Sweet Cakes by Melissa, faced. As devout Christians, the Kleins hold to a biblical definition of marriage. Because of their religious convictions, they declined to design and create a custom cake to celebrate a same-sex marriage, only to have the state of Oregon punish them with a $135,000 penalty. Now, the Kleins were forced to shut down their bakery. In June 2019, the Supreme Court threw out the state court's decision and sent the case back to Oregon. Recently, the Oregon Court of Appeals once again heard oral arguments in the case. Now, that's all good, but it doesn't matter if the state of Oregon's position is unconstitutional. The damage is done when innocent Americans are bankrupted while trying to defend themselves against the state. Now citizens are being punished for their views on biological sex. Shortly after the Supreme Court ruling, Jack Phillips found himself in court again after an activist attorney who identifies as transgender requested that Masterpiece Cake Shop create a gender transition celebration cake. Now, do you think that was a coincidence? I say hell no. He was targeted. Anyhow, after the Colorado Civil Rights Commission found probable cause that Phillips had discriminated on the basis of gender identity, he sued the commission for targeting him for his Christian beliefs. Ultimately, the commission dropped the case, and Phillips agreed to drop his own lawsuit against the agency. The Supreme Court actually found that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was antagonistic towards him because of his faith. Anyhow, even when victims win legal battles like Jack Phillips, conflicts like these have a chilling effect. They discourage people from opening new businesses or entering into certain fields entirely. The Equality Act would increase conflicts like these and put people out of work for their beliefs. Another group that would be harmed, medical professionals would also be harmed. The Equality Act would force hospitals and insurers to provide and pay for transgender therapies against any moral or medical objections. It would politicize medicine by forcing professionals to act against their best medical judgment to provide transition-affirming therapies. Catholic hospitals in California and New Jersey have already been sued for declining to perform hysterectomies on otherwise healthy women who want to become male. A Catholic hospital in Washington settled out of court when the ACLU sued them for declining to perform a double mastectomy on a gender dysphoric 16-year-old girl. And you know what? I can't even imagine being sued because I wouldn't perform a double mastectomy on a 16-year-old girl. That's just sick in my mind. Anyhow, these cases would multiply under the Equality Act. This bill would politicize medicine by forcing doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals to offer drastic procedures not in view of new scientific discoveries, but by ideological fiat. Parents and children would also be harmed by this bill. This politicization of medicine would ultimately harm families by normalizing hormonal and surgical interventions for gender dysphoric children, as well as ideologic education in schools and other public venues. 80 to 95% of children with gender dysphoria no longer feel distressed by their bodies after puberty. Yet activists continue to push their own radical protocol. Social transition as young as 4. Puberty blocking drugs as young as 9. Cross-sex hormones as young as 14. And surgery by 18, or in some cases, even younger. This protocol could become mandatory in the future. The latest issue of the American Journal of Bioethics includes an article arguing that the state should overrule the parents of gender dysphoric children who do not consent to giving them puberty-blocking drugs. By silencing the scientific debate on transgender-affirming therapies through the politicization of medicine, the Equality Act would further normalize this radical protocol and create an expectation that parents comply. In fact, parents in Ohio lost custody of their 17-year-old daughter because they declined to put her on testosterone supplements. It is no secret that radical gender ideology has found its way into our schools. This bill would stigmatize any and all opposition to such indoctrination. The Equality Act would put parental rights to make decisions about their children's medical treatment and education at risk. And as far as, stifling dissent, Brown University had a study on sudden onset gender dysphoria that showed clusters of teenage girls coming out as transgender because they're seeing this stuff online and at school and all this stuff, and they've never seen this. And then Brown pulled their own study because radical transgender activists put so much pressure on them. You can't even dispute this stuff. And when 80 to 95% of kids are no longer gender confused after they go through puberty, it's insane. It's child abuse to go ahead and give them these gender affirming therapies and surgeries when there's a 20 to 25 times higher suicide rate even when transgender people get the therapies and the surgeries and everything they want. So why would you even think about doing that to a child before they went through puberty when they were going to have an 80 to 95% chance of no longer feeling that gender dysphoria situation? Maybe I'm not saying it like I should, politically correct, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Anyhow, women would also be the victims. The Equality Act would ultimately lead to the erasure of women by dismantling sex-specific facilities, sports, and other female-only spaces. Sexual orientation and gender identity laws that open up sex-specific facilities like bathrooms, locker rooms, etc. to members of the opposite sex enable sexual assault. For example, Pasha Thomas was forced to remove her child from school after a male classmate assaulted her 5-year-old daughter in the girls' restroom. The boy had access to the girls' restroom because the school's policy that grants students access to private facilities on the basis of self-identified gender identity. Administrators refused to change the policy despite Thomas's complaints. The concern with these policies is that predators will take advantage of the law to gain access to victims. Policies like these make women less likely to report incidents and law enforcement less likely to get involved for fear of being accused of discrimination. Not to mention, I wonder how many of these events have gone unreported by the media because it doesn't fit their narrative. These policies also leave women at a disadvantage in sex-specific sports and other activities. Two biological males who identify and compete as women easily took first and second place at the Connecticut State Track Championships. So now these women aren't going to be able to get scholarships. They're going to give them to boys. Selena Soule, a female runner, lost the race and the chance to be scouted by college coaches and selected for athletic scholarships. We all know the outcome of the race before it even starts, she said. It's demoralizing. Females of all ages can expect to lose more and more opportunities like these to biological males who have a natural advantage in sports and physical activities. The Equality Act would defeat the entire purpose of Title IX, which was meant to ensure that women would have the same opportunities as men, including in sports, and would leave women vulnerable to sexual assault. Nonprofits and volunteers would also suffer from the Equality Act. The Equality Act would also hurt charities, volunteers, and the populations they serve. State and local sexual orientation and gender identity laws have shut down numerous faith-based adoption and foster care agencies across the country in Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois, California, Massachusetts, and the District of Columbia. These states wrongly treated the belief that children do best with both a mother and a father as discriminatory, and kids are the ones who are paying the price. With 438,000 children languishing in foster care nationwide, we need more agencies working to help kids find homes, not fewer. Now, charities that admit to the reality of biological sex are under attack too. In Anchorage, Alaska, a biological male twice tried to gain access to the city's downtown Hope Center, a shelter for homeless, abused, and trafficked women. In response, the individual sued the center for alleged gender identity discrimination. A federal sexual orientation and gender identity law can force any charity to open up private facilities, including sex-specific bathrooms, showers, and sleeping areas, to members of the opposite sex. The Equality Act would cost our country countless charitable organizations, which means fewer institutions would be available to serve populations in need. The Equality Act actually furthers inequality, especially for women and girls, by punishing anyone who does not affirm a single viewpoint of marriage and biological sex. The federal sexual orientation and gender identity law would empower the government to interfere in how regular Americans think, speak, and act at home, at school, at work, and at play. Any bill promoting such authoritarianism is a danger to our freedoms. And you know what? And I think every parent and every grandparent, we should be outraged. We should be showing our outraged. I don't know how this works, but when I first found out about the stuff with school sports and sending kids into the bathrooms, I thought this was going to take care of itself. Where is the outrage from the parents of these girls, from the uncles and aunts of these girls? We should be totally outraged by what's going on with this situation. We can have compassion on transgender people without putting other children at risk or destroying opportunities for women. Anyhow, switching from that, I'm going to switch from to the For the People Act, or House Resolution 1. This piece of legislation seeks to undermine any hope we have for election integrity in the United States of America, and it creates a one-party system, basically. The House Democrats passed a bill that embraces almost everything that the Bipartisan Commission on Federal Election Reform condemned in 2005. The Commission on Federal Election Reform was a private, bipartisan organization founded in 2004 by former President Jimmy Carter and James Baker to overcome the flaws brought to light by the electoral uncertainty in Florida in the 2000 United States presidential election. The Wall Street Journal editorial board opposes the bill, contending that it was designed to auto-enroll likely Democrat voters and enhance Democratic turnout with no concern for ballot integrity. It actually makes it so that you cannot even ask for voter ID. The 2019 version of the For the People Act also sought to create a statehood for Washington, D.C., virtually guaranteeing two new Democratic United States senators and at least one Democratic congressional seat, since Washington, D.C. is almost 70% Democrats. First of all, it's a city. Absorb it into one of the states around it. Given its statehood is a joke. If we do that, we'll make Rapid City a state. We'll make Sioux Falls a state. Just take every single... These guys are out of their minds. Anyhow, I'll calm down. The Equality Act is designed as a weapon to be used to go after conservatives, while the For the People Act is designed to consolidate power for the Democratic Party. I urge you to contact your United States senators as soon as possible to let them know that you oppose both H.R. 1 and H.R. 5. And I would, you know what? I mean, if you're a praying person, I mean, the Equality Act is designed to go after people of faith. That's what it's about. And, you know, mostly in this country, it's going to be mostly Christians. But you know what? It's Jewish people, Muslim people. You don't hear about it as much because there's not as many of them. But it's going to go after all people of faith. You know, they try to say we have a right to worship. That's not what it is. What the First Amendment actually says is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, the fact that that is the very first amendment to the Constitution tells me that it's pretty important. And if it was just about the right to worship, that's just silly, because I could worship God anywhere at any time. So this wouldn't be something that the government could keep me from doing. But when part of my worship to God is to be obedient to his word, and I don't feel comfortable doing something, and I don't want to participate, and then the government wants to force me to participate, that's what the First Amendment's about. So let's get that straight. So anyhow, going back to the prayer thing, definitely time to pray. I see these people, to me, they're communists. You know what I mean? Communists always go after people of faith, and they're trying to destroy our election integrity. These people don't even know they're communists, I don't think. I mean, I know there's a heavy Marxist influence in our universities. It's well known. These people are communists. They think they're progressives, man. They're communists, man. We need to pray. We definitely need to pray. Anyhow, thanks for watching Dave's Worldview. And don't forget to contact your senators and tell them no on H.R. 1 and H.R. 5. All right. God bless.